The massive command ship hovered at the edge of the Centauri gateway, its sleek hull reflecting starlight like polished obsidian. Admiral Tejo stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the tactical display with unwavering attention. The holographic projection showed 200 hegemony warships arranged in perfect defensive formation, the most powerful battle group assembled in 50 cycles. "Admiral, final position reports from all squadron leaders," announced Lieutenant Min-Su, his voice calm despite the tension filling the bridge. "The defensive perimeter is established." Tejo nodded without turning. "And our intelligence on the human fleet?" "Latest reports confirm movement from all their outer colonies," said Commander Jaiwu, approaching with a data tablet. "They've been gathering ships for weeks. Conservative estimates suggest at least 500 warships, possibly more." The Admiral finally turned, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the polished deck. The skin around his eyes crinkled with concern. "They must understand this means war." "The humans have never backed down from a challenge," Jaiwu replied. "Not since we first encountered them 20 cycles ago." Tejo remembered that first contact well. The hegemony had expected humans to react with appropriate awe at meeting the dominant power in this sector of the galaxy. Instead, the humans had been curious, cautious, and remarkably unimpressed. What they lacked in technological sophistication, they made up for with innovation and adaptability. Each year, they closed the gap between their capabilities and the hegemonies. "The Council should have dealt with them more firmly from the beginning," muttered Sub-Commander Dohayan from his station. "Now they claim territories that have been in hegemony maps for generations." Tejo did not disagree, but discipline required him to maintain a neutral perspective. "The Council's decisions are not ours to question. Our duty is to execute the defensive strategy." A junior officer approached with a refreshment tray. Tejo selected a cup of steaming blue liquid and sipped it slowly, savoring the bitter taste that helped sharpen his mind. Through the massive viewport, he could see the swirling energies of the Centauri Gateway, the spatial phenomenon that connected this sector to human-controlled space. "Admiral," called out the sensor officer, "long-range detectors are picking up unusual energy readings from the gateway." "Is it the human fleet?" Jaiwo asked, moving quickly to the sensor station. "Uncertain. The pattern doesn't match known human jump signatures. It's more focused, more precise." Tejo placed his cup down and straightened his uniform tunic. "All ships, battle stations. Prepare to receive the human fleet." Throughout the command ship, alert signals pulsed. Officers moved with practiced efficiency to their posts. Weapon systems powered up across 200 vessels, shield generators hummed to life, and fighter squadrons stood ready in launch bays. "Admiral," said Jaiwo hesitantly, "something isn't right. These readings suggest a single point of emergence, not a fleet-wide jump formation." Tejo frowned. Could they be using a new technology? Perhaps a concentrated assault force? Possibly, but Jaiwo's reply was cut short as the gateway flared with brilliant light. The swirling energies of the spatial portal coalesced into a perfect circle of blinding white. Everyone on the bridge shielded their eyes except Tejo, who watched unflinchingly as the light pulsed once, twice, 3 times. "Emergence in 5 seconds, announced the sensor officer. The bridge fell silent. 200 ships, thousands of weapons, all aimed at the gateway, ready to face humanity's full military might. The light from the gateway dimmed. From its center emerged a single vessel. Not a massive dreadnought. Not the vanguard of a mighty fleet. Just one ship, smaller than even the hegemony's light cruisers. "Confirm that reading," demanded Tejo, "sure there must be some mistake." "Confirmed, Admiral. One vessel only. Configuration unknown, not matching any recorded human design." The ship was elegant in its simplicity, a sleek hull with no visible weapons or defense systems. Yet sensors indicated energy readings that defied conventional analysis. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. Tejo stared at the lone ship, confusion giving way to unease. In his long military career, he had learned to recognize when an opponent held a card they believed would change the game. "On screen," he ordered. The main view screen activated, revealing a human female with short black hair and calm, confident eyes. "This is Captain Suman of the HSV Defiant," she stated matter-of-factly. "I believe you were expecting us." Admiral Tejo looked from the screen to the tactical display, where 200 warships surrounded a single human vessel. Something was very wrong. "Captain," he replied carefully, "we were expecting an army." Captain Suman's lips curved into the slightest smile. "I know." The bridge of the Hegemony flagship fell silent as all eyes fixed on the viewscreen showing Captain Suman of the human vessel. Admiral Tejo studied her with careful attention. She wore a simple gray uniform with minimal insignia, her posture relaxed yet commanding. "This must be some kind of trick," whispered Subcommander Dohayan. "Where is the rest of their fleet?" Tejo raised his hand for silence. "Captain Suman," he said, keeping his voice level, "I am Admiral Tejo of the Galactic Hegemony 7th Fleet. Your presence here is unexpected. Our intelligence indicated a large-scale human military operation." "Your intelligence was partially correct," replied Suman. "Earth did authorize a military response to the Hegemony's recent actions in the disputed territories. However, we determined that sending the Defiant alone would be sufficient." Murmurs of disbelief spread across the bridge. Commander Jaiwo leaned closer to Tejo. "Admiral, our scanners cannot penetrate the hull of their vessel. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database." Tejo nodded slightly. "Captain, perhaps you misunderstand the situation. You face 200 warships of the Hegemony's finest battle group. Whatever capabilities your vessel possesses, the math does not favor you." Captain Suman's expression remained unchanged. "Numbers can be deceiving, Admiral. The Defiant represents a new approach to space travel and defense. We hoped this demonstration would encourage diplomatic reconsideration rather than conflict." "Demonstration?" Tejo's antennae twitched with interest. "Is that what this is?" Before Suman could answer, Lieutenant Minsu called out from the sensor station. "Admiral! The human vessel is moving." On the tactical display, the small ship began to drift slowly forward, approaching the center of the Hegemony formation. "All vessels maintain position," ordered Tejo. "Track that ship but do not engage without my command." The Defiant continued its unhurried approach, seemingly unconcerned by the hundreds of weapon systems targeting it. Captain Suman remained visible on the screen, her hands resting calmly on the arms of her command chair. "What exactly are you demonstrating, Captain?" asked Tejo. "A chance for peace," she replied. "The Hegemony has operated under the assumption that humanity would eventually be absorbed into your political structure, like all other species you've encountered. We're here to correct that misunderstanding." Subcommander Dohayan stepped forward. "Admiral, this is clearly a distraction. Their main fleet must be planning an attack through another route." Tejo considered this possibility. "Captain Suman, if this is truly a diplomatic mission, why send a military vessel? And why through the Centauri Gateway, where you knew our fleet awaited?" "The Defiant is not strictly a military vessel," Suman explained. "And we chose this approach precisely because your fleet is here. Sometimes seeing is more convincing than telling." As she spoke, the tactical display suddenly flashed a warning. 3 small Hegemony scout ships had broken formation and were moving to intercept the Defiant. "Who authorized that movement?" demanded Tejo. "Squadron 5 acting independently, Admiral," reported Commander Jaiwo with concern. "They're not responding to recall orders." On screen, Captain Suman glanced to the side, apparently receiving information from her crew. "It seems some of your captains are eager for action, Admiral. I won't hold you responsible for their decision." The 3 scout ships surrounded the human vessel, their weapons charged and ready. The lead ship transmitted an open channel message: "Human vessel, power down and prepare for boarding." Captain Suman sighed. "That won't be possible." What happened next left the entire Hegemony bridge crew speechless. The Defiant simply vanished. One moment it was there, surrounded by the 3 scout ships, and the next it was gone. "Where did it go?" Tejo demanded. "Did they activate a jump drive?" "No jump signature detected," replied the sensor officer, frantically checking his instruments. No trace of the vessel at all. It's as if it ceased to exist. 3 seconds later, the Defiant reappeared behind the Hegemony flagship, less than 500 meters from Teiho's command ship. Impossible, gasped Commander Jaiwoo. No ship can move that distance without detection. The communications system activated again, showing Captain Suman's face. As I was saying, Admiral, the Defiant represents a new approach to space travel. What you just witnessed was a dimensional shift, not teleportation or a jump drive. Teiho stared at the screen, his military discipline momentarily shaken. In 40 years of service, he had never seen technology that could simply ignore the laws of physics as he understood them. I think, he said slowly, we should discuss those diplomatic options you mentioned. Captain Suman nodded, a hint of relief crossing her features. I'm glad to hear that, Admiral. Because the alternative would be most unpleasant for everyone involved. Admiral Teiho sat at the head of the conference table aboard his flagship, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The lone human vessel Defiant floated serenely among the massive Hegemony ships. Its dimensional jump had shocked his officers into silence. Admiral, Sub-Commander Dohayan whispered urgently, we cannot allow this single ship to intimidate our entire fleet. This must be some kind of bluff. Teiho considered his options carefully. The diplomatic channel with Captain Suman remained open but muted while they discussed their response. Commander Jaiwoo, what is your assessment? Teiho asked. Jaiwoo studied her data tablet. The dimensional shift technology they demonstrated contradicts our understanding of physics. But a single technology, no matter how advanced, doesn't make them invincible. The Admiral nodded slowly. Perhaps we need more information before proceeding with negotiations. He signaled for the communications officer to unmute the channel. Captain Suman's calm face appeared on screen. Captain, your demonstration was impressive, Teiho acknowledged. But surely you understand our need for clarity. What exactly are the capabilities of your vessel? Suman's expression remained neutral. Admiral, I'm not authorized to provide technical specifications. I can only repeat that we hope for a peaceful resolution. Before Teiho could respond, Dohayan stepped forward. Admiral, Cruiser Tae-1 is reporting unusual energy readings from the human ship. They're requesting permission to conduct a scan with active sensors. Teiho hesitated. Active scanning could be interpreted as aggressive, but he needed information. Permission granted. But maintain distance. On the display, the cruiser Tae-1 moved slightly closer to the Defiant and activated its powerful scanning array. A beam of invisible energy swept over the human vessel. Instantly, the Defiant's hull began to shimmer with a rippling blue light. What's happening? Demanded Teiho. The Defiant appears to be absorbing the scan energy, reported the sensor officer, confusion evident in his voice. Tae-1 reports their scanners are being drained of power. Captain Suman's voice came through the speakers. Admiral, I would appreciate if you didn't do that. Your scanning frequencies can interfere with our systems. As she spoke, the blue shimmer around the Defiant intensified. Suddenly, it released a pulse of energy that spread outward in a perfect sphere. When it touched the cruiser Tae-1, all lights on the vessel went dark. Tae-1 reports complete power failure, shouted the communications officer. Life support on emergency backup only. Teiho stood up, alarmed. Was that an attack? Not exactly, replied Suman calmly. That was our adaptive defense system responding to your scan. The effect is temporary. Power will return to the cruiser in approximately 10 minutes. Another voice cut in over the communications system. It was Captain Eunju of the destroyer Hansung. This is an outrage. Admiral, we must respond with force. Before Teiho could countermand, the Hansung fired a low-power warning shot across the bow of the Defiant. The energy beam never reached its target. Instead, it seemed to bend around the human ship as if space itself was warping. Gravity manipulation field, explained Captain Suman, still unnervingly calm. Another of our defensive systems. The Hansung fired again, this time at full power. The beam struck what appeared to be an invisible barrier around the Defiant and split into thousands of smaller beams that scattered harmlessly into space. Captain Unju, cease fire immediately, ordered Taeho. But it was too late. The Hansun launched a full spread of missiles toward the human vessel. What happened next defied explanation. The Defiant seemed to flicker, becoming semi-transparent. The missiles passed harmlessly through where the ship had been and continued into empty space. Phase shifting, said Sumin. We exist partly in another dimension during the shift. The Defiant reappeared and emitted another energy pulse, this one more focused. It struck the Hansung directly. Instead of going dark like the Tae-1, the destroyer remained powered but completely immobile. Inertial dampening field, explains Sumin. Your ship can still operate, but cannot move for approximately 1 hour. Admiral Taeho sank back into his chair. In less than 5 minutes, the single human vessel had neutralized 2 hegemony warships without causing a single casualty. Captain, he said finally, I think it's time you explained the true purpose of your mission. Sumin nodded. The Defiant is a technology demonstrator, Admiral. What you've witnessed represents only a fraction of its capabilities. We could have built hundreds of these vessels, but chose to send only one. Why? Asked Taeho. Because we don't want war. We want the hegemony to understand that the old assumptions about humanity's place in the galaxy are no longer valid. We are not a minor species to be eventually absorbed or controlled. Admiral Taeho looked at the tactical display, where his mighty fleet surrounded a single ship that had just proven more powerful than anything the hegemony had ever encountered. I think, he said quietly, we are beginning to understand. Admiral Taeho stood at the center of the command bridge, surrounded by his senior officers. The mood was tense. 2 hegemony warships floated powerless in space, disabled by the lone human vessel without firing a single destructive shot. The remaining ships of the fleet maintained their positions, waiting for orders. Admiral, we're receiving a formal transmission from the Defiant, announced Lieutenant Minsu. Captain Sumin requests to present terms from the Earth government. Taeho nodded slowly. Put her on screen. Captain Sumin appeared, her expression serious but not hostile. Admiral Taeho, I've been authorized to present humanity's conditions for peaceful resolution of our territorial disputes. Conditions, echoed Subcommander Dohyan, his voice sharp with indignation. They send one ship and expect to dictate terms to the entire hegemony? Taeho raised his hand for silence. We will hear these terms, Captain. Sumin nodded. First, the hegemony must recognize all current human settlements and outposts as sovereign territory, including those in the contested Orion sectors. Second, Earth must be acknowledged as an independent power, not subject to eventual integration into the hegemony political structure. Third, human technological development will remain autonomous, free from hegemony oversight or restrictions. Commander Jaiwoo leaned close to Taeho. These are the same demands they've made for years. Nothing has changed except this display of technology. Everything has changed, Taeho replied quietly. He addressed Sumin again. And if the Hegemony Council refuses these terms? Then we will be forced to deploy our full defensive capabilities, Sumin answered simply. The Defiant is the first of its class. We have materials to construct hundreds more. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. If one ship could neutralize hegemony vessels with ease, what could a fleet of them do? You must understand our position, Taeho said carefully. I cannot make such decisions alone. The council must be consulted. Of course, agreed Sumin. We will remain here while you communicate with your leadership. However, I must emphasize that our terms are non-negotiable. As Taeho prepared to respond, alarms blared across the command bridge. Admiral, shouted the tactical officer. The Vortex Squadron is breaking formation. 5 heavy cruisers moving to attack position. Taeho spun toward the tactical display. Who authorized this? Order them to stand down immediately. They're not responding, sir. Commander Juno has cut communications. On screen, Captain Sumin received word of the development from one of her officers. She sighed visibly. It seems some of your commanders have made their decision, she said. I regret what must happen now. The 5 hegemony cruisers accelerated toward the Defiant, weapon systems fully charged. Their combined firepower could destroy a small moon. Captain, please, Tejo implored. Those ships are acting against orders. Don't let their actions derail our discussions. Sumin nodded. I understand, Admiral. We will respond proportionally. The Defiant remained motionless as the cruisers approached. When they were within firing range, all 5 ships launched a coordinated attack. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the human vessel. Just before impact, the Defiant emitted a strange rippling field that expanded outward. As it touched each attacking ship, something extraordinary happened. The cruisers didn't explode or lose power. They simply stopped. The energy beams froze in space. The missiles hung motionless. What have you done? Whispered Tejo. Temporal stasis field, explained Suman calmly. The ships and everything around them are experiencing time at approximately 1/10,000th the normal rate. From their perspective, only milliseconds will pass while we complete our negotiations. Commander Jaiwa's eyes widened. That's impossible. Time manipulation on that scale would require energy equal to a small star. Our understanding of physics has evolved, Suman replied simply. This is why we came alone, Admiral. We could have deployed hundreds of ships with these capabilities. We could have frozen your entire fleet in time. Instead, we chose restraint. Tejo stared at the frozen ships, understanding at last the full implications of what humanity had achieved. They weren't just technologically superior, they had broken through fundamental limits the hegemony had considered immutable laws of physics. You could have conquered us, he said quietly. That was never our intention, answered Suman. Humanity doesn't seek dominance, Admiral. We seek recognition and respect. Tejo straightened his uniform and made his decision. I will contact the Hegemony Council immediately and recommend acceptance of your terms. Not because of fear, but because you've demonstrated wisdom along with power. You could have destroyed us, but chose not to. Captain Suman's expression softened slightly. Sometimes the strongest statement is the one left unmade, Admiral. We look forward to a new relationship between our peoples. Around them, the hegemony fleet remained in position, watching as history changed before their eyes. The grand chamber of the Hegemony Council glowed with soft blue light from the curved ceiling high above. 17 representatives from different species sat in a semicircle, their faces showing various expressions of concern, curiosity, and in some cases, barely concealed anger. At the center of the chamber stood Captain Suman, alone but completely at ease. Admiral Tejo watched from a side gallery, his formal uniform crisp and perfect for this historic occasion. The emergency session had been called within hours of his transmission to the council. Never in the 300-year history of the hegemony had the ruling body assembled so quickly. The council recognizes Captain Suman of Earth, announced High Counselor Yuna, her voice echoing in the vast space. You may present your government's position. Suman bowed slightly. Thank you, High Counselor. I represent not just a government, but a species that wishes to live in peace with the hegemony, as equals rather than subjects. Equals, interrupted Counselor Jaehuan, his scaled skin flushing dark orange with emotion. The hegemony has existed for centuries before humans even left their home planet. Every species eventually joins our political structure. It is the natural order. Suman nodded patiently. Every species you've encountered until now, yes. But humanity has chosen a different path. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed technical readings from the encounter at the Centauri Gateway, the dimensional shifting, the adaptive shielding, the temporal stasis field. What you're seeing represents a fundamental breakthrough in physics, Suman explained. Our scientists discovered principles that the hegemony considered theoretical impossibilities. We've moved beyond conventional understanding of space, time, and energy. The council chamber filled with murmurs as the representatives studied the data. If these readings are accurate, said Counselor Minji, the chief science advisor, your single ship could have defeated our entire fleet. Yes, replied Sumin simply. Then why didn't you, demanded Jae-won. If you possess such power, why come with terms instead of demands? Sumin turned to face him directly. Because domination through force creates enemies, not partners. Earth could have built hundreds of ships like the Defiant. We could have frozen your fleets in time and claimed your territories. Instead, we chose to demonstrate our capabilities while minimizing harm. High Counselor Yuna leaned forward. You mentioned a different understanding of physics. Would Earth be willing to share this knowledge? Eventually, yes, said Sumin. But first, we must establish trust. The hegemony has treated humans as a developing species to be guided and eventually absorbed. That perception must change before meaningful scientific exchange can begin. The council members conferred among themselves in hushed tones. After several minutes, Yuna spoke again. We need time to consider all implications. The council will recess for 3 hours. As the representatives filed out, Admiral Taeho approached Captain Sumin. You handled that well, he said quietly. Counselor Jae-won has never been fond of humans. Sumin smiled slightly. Change is difficult for many. The hegemony has operated the same way for centuries. What will you do if they reject your terms? Taeho asked. They won't, she replied with quiet confidence. They're practical beings. The demonstration at the gateway made our point clear without bloodshed. That's something they can understand and respect. 3 hours later, the council reconvened. High Counselor Yuna stood at the center of the chamber, a data crystal in her hand. After careful deliberation, the council has decided to accept the terms presented by Earth. A new treaty will be drafted recognizing human sovereignty and technological independence. The announcement sent ripples of reaction through the chamber, relief from some, resignation from others. Counselor Jae-won looked displeased but remained silent. Furthermore, continued Yuna, we propose establishing a joint scientific commission to explore potential areas of cooperation, with full respect for humanity's autonomous development. Captain Sumin bowed. Earth accepts these terms with gratitude. The joint commission will be an excellent first step toward a new relationship. As the formal proceedings concluded, Admiral Taeho joined Sumin in the corridor outside the chamber. You've achieved something remarkable today, he said. Centuries of hegemony policy changed in a single session. Sometimes the universe requires a dramatic demonstration to see what was always true, Sumin replied. Humans were never meant to be subjects. Taeho nodded thoughtfully. I've served the hegemony my entire life, Captain. I believed in its mission to unite all species under one system. But today I learned something important. What's that? Asked Sumin. That true strength isn't measured by the size of your fleet or the number of worlds you control. It's measured by knowing when not to use your power. Sumin smiled. That wisdom will serve the hegemony well in the centuries to come. Together they walked toward the observation deck overlooking the magnificent spiral galaxy they both called home, a home that suddenly seemed much larger, and much more interesting, than before.